Good afternoon, and thank you all for joining us. My name is Brandon Martin, Inbound Marketing and Content Manager here at AgileQuest. We're so excited to have you with us today. Before we get started, please direct your attention to the navigation panel to the right of your screen. Please enter any questions you have throughout the presentation into the Q&A window, and we will answer them at the end of the presentation. If you have additional comments or need assistance, please use the chat panel. We will also have a poll at the end of the webinar, which will appear in the WebEx panel when it is time to participate. Joining us today, we have DeAnne Weiss, Senior Manager, Facilities Systems Strategist for the Corporate Real Estate Division at Healthcare Services Corporation. She provides subject matter expertise in the areas of workplace optimization and IWMS strategy with a focus on improving people, process, and technology. We also have with us former Harvard Business School professor and co-founder and editorial advisor for Work and Place Journal, Mr. Jim Ware. Jim has invested his entire career in understanding what organizations must do to thrive in a rapidly changing world and enabling them to succeed. He is a workplace futurist, a meeting design strategist, an accomplished author, and a keynote speaker. And PhD too, I believe. So I'm sorry I said Mr. Dr. Jim Ware, excuse me. Also with us is AgileQuest's own John Vivadelli. John is a recognized expert in the fields of workplace strategy, real estate measurement, and management. He founded AgileQuest Corporation in 1994, and under his leadership, the company has built an international reputation for workplace management innovation. So once again, thank you so much for joining us today. I'll turn it over now to our Assistant Marketing Director, Ashley Lofton-Hyman, who will set up the scenarios that our speakers will be covering today.
Great. Thank you, Brandon. We really are looking forward to the great discussion today with these three panelists. It covers some very real challenges that most organizations must address to stay competitive and sustainable. So as we all know, organizations are challenged these days to do more with less. We hear it all the time. While keeping ahead of ever-changing business priorities. Real estate leadership must play a key role by optimizing real estate and cutting its costs, while at the same time still provide an attractive, branded, and flexible workplace to attract talent, foster collaboration, and productivity. Even then, the definition of attractive space can mean very different things to the four generations now resident in our workplaces. Being attentive to the cultural implications and allowing each generation to choose where and when they want to work plays a key role in delivering a successful workplace. Traditionally, significant focus has been given to measuring space utilization to divest of excess space and cut costs. But as we are already starting to see, more and more organizations are exploring sharing economy principles that focus on the ability to generate additional revenue from this very same excess space. So that brings us to today's discussion, in which you will hear how Healthcare Service Corporation is addressing each of these challenges you see up on your screen. And then how, with the right strategy, change management, and technology, organizations can find even more success in balancing the workplace, workforce, and their business goals. We know there's a ton of information to cover, and we're going to discuss as much as we can in this short amount of time. But we will host a deeper dive webinar in a couple of months that will open the floor up to more of your questions and feedback. So, without further ado, let me introduce Healthcare Service Corporation. HCSC is the largest customer-owned health insurance company in the U.S. and an independent licensee of Blue Cross and Blue Shield Association. They operate through Blue Cross and Blue Shield plans for Illinois, Montana, New Mexico, Oklahoma, and Texas. And they're unique in that they are both a landlord and a tenant of space. The corporate real estate division manages about 6.4 million square feet of space with a total of 53 facilities ranging in office types, headquarters, marketing and sales, claims, and customer service. So, with all of that real estate, that makes DeAnne Weiss the perfect person to talk to today. So, DeAnne, let's go ahead and dive in. As we all know, the healthcare industry seems to be changing every day, nonstop, and with the constantly evolving business needs, how is your workplace keeping up and better yet supporting these changes?
Well, we're constantly looking at new ways of how people work in our environment, not only through just the physical environment, but also technology. And one thing that we're working on right now is we are rolling out what we call our Blue Workplace Strategy, and it's an alternative workplace flexibility program that we are implementing in our headquarters building in Chicago. And we've had great success with it so far. Some of the other things that we're doing to just stay competitive in terms of real estate optimization, we're constantly changing just with the health industry that we're in. And we do not want to increase our real estate even if our employee base is increasing. We want to optimize it and become better at defining how we use that space to the best of our ability instead of just automatically increasing our footprint. So with that, what we want to do is we want to try and stay proactive versus reactive. And with that, that comes with a relationship with HR and even our IT division. We want to know how HR is being competitive in terms of attracting talent. What are people looking for in a workplace environment, in the culture? And then also, how do we provide that once we start to onboard people? We come from the traditional background of assigned seats where it's a one-to-one relationship. We're starting to go into this Blue Workplace Flexibility Strategy. So one of our challenges that we're coming up against is assigned versus actual utilization. And traditionally we were able to say, okay, if you were in an assigned seat, we're counting that as one occupancy. But now that we have people that are free, what we would call free realm, where they do not have a seat assignment, how do we actually track when they're in the building and what spaces they're using? So that has been one of our challenges. One of the other things that we're doing to optimize our square footage as well is we have a work from home program. And this is mainly focused on our claims customer service sites, where we'll bring in groups of people, we'll train them for 8 to 12 weeks, we'll move them out onto the floor in our buildings, and once they are adapted to their work environment and their work functionality, they do have the ability to qualify to work from home permanently. So what we'll do is we'll move a group of people to work from home, and then we'll cycle another new group of people through training again. So basically we're using the space as transition to train and familiarize people with our company, and then they can go work from home.
DeAnne, that's interesting because as what we've seen, and it parallels to the situation you have, which is more and more you start looking at how do I optimize my own space, and mostly real estate people think of their space as the 10-year space. But more and more now, that core space is being augmented by very flexible space. I'll just use the term flexible office. It might include co-working, it might include serviced office suites, it could be all kinds of different work at home, lots of different flexibility. And so what we start to look at is to how can we measure, manage, optimize, understand the cost of the quote-unquote entire portfolio, not just the 10-year space. So this is putting more and more pressure on real estate executives to stop thinking about just the 10-year space and start thinking about the broader places where their employees work. And over time, we're going to get to the point where, depending on the industry, it might be 90% 10-year space, 10% flexible, or it might be maybe 80-20, depending on the industry. So understanding that entire portfolio is going to be interesting, and there's going to be a lot of opportunity within that. Okay.
Okay, great. So we talked about, the new hires coming in and getting them ready for the space. Obviously, one of the kind of big challenges is providing space. Are you using any kind of, swing space or space outside to help kind of support new people coming in and out as often as your business is changing?
We do. In the past, we've traditionally, like for instance in our high-rise in Chicago, we've always kept a couple of floors vacant and shelled out between us and the tenants. And that has always been, our future build-out. But what we're doing is, because we're trying to optimize and really use this space to the best of our ability, that has since gone away. So I think one of our challenges is really, swing space. How do we accommodate swing space when we are doing a renovation of a floor from traditional layout to our Blue Workspace plan? Where do we put these people temporarily to be able to do that construction work and then move them back in? And then also just, sometimes businesses have seasonal swings in terms of an increase in work. I know just in the healthcare industry alone, open enrollment increases the number of people that you need on board in order to, handle incoming calls and inquiries for those open enrollment individuals. So those are challenges that we do face.
DeAnne, this is Jim. Can you hear me?
Go, Jim.
Yeah, I'm just going to make the comment that one of my clients a number of years ago said, it used to be really easy to predict how much space we needed. We took the number of employees that were assigned to the building, multiplied it by a square footage average, added the common space, and we knew what we needed. He said, now we never know from one day to the next how many people are going to be in the building. And
Exactly.
as you're alluding to, it's a much more dynamic work environment. People are making choices, and while you may be able to predict it statistically, for individuals it could be different every day.
And we are experiencing that exact issue that you're talking about. We used to do the same thing 5 to 10 years ago. We would be able to take our yearly budget of, the number of people that we're going to be increasing by with what people told us 6 months prior when they were entering their budget numbers for the upcoming year, and it was pretty consistent. Now it is really hard for our management to predict what's going to happen 6 months from now in their budget. So we're seeing that inconsistency now in terms of being able to just blanketly say, we're going to increase by 5% across the board.
And that's where
it does strike me that the fact that you can have people working from home full-time gives you some flexibility. You can even, if you needed to in some emergency, you can even kick some people out of the office and tell them to work from home for a week or something. I mean, that's a simplistic point, I'm sure, but it gives you more flexibility than you would have otherwise.
And we've seen people that go, to a quote-unquote flexible workplace strategy at a 1.2 or 1.3 to 1 worker to workplace ratio. And what we're finding is that that's just inadequate for the kind of flexibility that organizations are going to need. They need to go to 2 to 1 worker to workplace ratio or 3 to 1, so that, and that changes on a daily basis. So systems have to be in place to be able to measure that, monitor it, understand it, know its peaks and valleys. The average isn't good enough. You just really need to understand that on a broader basis. And I think that, the other aspect of flexibility, and DeAnne touched on this, is because they don't have that swing space immediately available sitting there vacant, now the idea is, could I create a network of trusted partners where their space and our space is shared between the two? That's one of the reasons we built the platform we built, our new AgileQuest platform, so that trusted partners could share their space between each other, so that I may need it 1 month, the other partner may need it another month, and so it's a solution for things like swing space
that's being needed, and I'm getting the hook here, so we need to move on to the next question.
Yeah, no, there's actually a really good transition in there, John. That the next kind of challenge that we have is leveraging the workplace to attract and retain top talent, and to bring in the new talent. There's ways to use your workplace and then to keep them there. So, DeAnne, I know this is something you all are doing some interesting things with, even some public space. So, can you kind of dive into what are you doing before they're hired to attract them, and then once they get there, what are you doing to support your new talent?
Sure. When we first started the Blue Workplace program, we met with HR and IT, and I think to have a program like that, you do need a strong connection between all three divisions in order to make it a seamless process. And it's also a branding that you're going through as well, because that branding then is what HR is going to go out and basically recruit people with, is the type of, what is our culture? What does it look like? How do we operate? What does our business model look like in terms of culture? And I think that's what we're selling really to the individuals that we're hiring. And then when the onboarding occurs, it needs to be a seamless transition. We want to make sure that once we do attract those new hires, that when we bring them on board, that it's an easy process for them to get started in the workplace. And that is a constant evolving challenge for us to be able to do that. Just because not only at the rate we're hiring in certain instances, we've got to get people onboarded. We try to make sure that it's within a certain number of days. But we're all having, HR, IT, and real estate, we're all having to have a piece of the puzzle to make sure that person is, in place and is working as soon as possible. So that it's a challenge, but it's also a necessity, and we all know that. So some of the shared oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to talk about your pedway. So why don't you, the shared public space, that was really interesting.
Okay. So we do have a pedway that is on the lower level of our building in Chicago, and it's connected to a public parking garage, underground parking garage. So especially even in the wintertime when people are walking from the garage to their respective buildings, they can actually walk through our pedway to get to their buildings, and that gives them a little bit of cover in terms of weather conditions. But there's also coffee shops, retail stores down there that they have access to, and it's a really nice place to actually meet and greet people. So there's an exchange that can happen between, potential people that may want to work in our building versus, the employees that are already there. A lot of times, first thing in the morning, I see people down there having coffee and actually having meetings. Just in the public area. So they see us doing work there.
And then, the next step could be that you take advantage of that and those people, those interactions, and you start inviting specific talent or specific types of people through a platform to be able to invite them into your space so that these are potential hires, people that you want to do business with in the future. And so it's a really effective way of attracting top talent and using what you can see from the pictures, the people on the call can see from the pictures, some really beautiful space as an attraction to talent, and have them come in, share a cup of coffee, give them a place to go to work, and then over time hire them.
Yeah. John, I would push that even a little farther. I know several organizations that have actually set up what we now call co-working spaces on the lobby floor of their buildings, where they're actually allowing people to reserve space for, just like any other co-working place. Come in and work for a day or a couple hours, a conference room, whatever. But they're in essence, they're experiencing the workplace of the landlord, of the tenant, of the host organization, and it's a powerful way to get people to know who you are.
And that's a great kind of a way of looking at it from a standpoint of what like what DeAnne said is you're selling your culture, you're selling your brand, you're selling your core values
Absolutely.
to these people. And boy, if you have a brand that says or words that say flexibility, mobility, innovation, and they walk into space that's cubicles and assigned offices and et cetera, you're going to turn off those people. They're going to know that you're not actually living your core values in your culture. So the workplace plays a huge role in being able to extend the brand and being able to extend the core values and culture that your organization is trying to espouse. And if you can put a platform in place to help manage that and measure it, oh my gosh, it's a very powerful thing.
John, I'll again push a little farther even. I got into this business of focusing on hoteling and work from home programs and workplace flexibility a couple decades ago because I was convinced, and I still am, that the only way you can really attract and retain top talent today is to give your workforce a lot of personal control over where, when, and how they get their work done. We can't treat them like assembly line workers. These are highly educated, motivated, knowledge workers, and no one knows better than they do when and where they can work most effectively. And I think if organizations are not willing to give them that kind of autonomy and accountability that goes with it, of course, they're going to have trouble attracting and retaining those folks. So this is in essence a talent attraction strategy. There's no question about it.
Absolutely. Choice inside and outside the office drives engagement. Engagement drives productivity. Productivity drives revenue. And that chain is really what we're after here. That's exactly what we're after.
Absolutely. Okay.
Next question.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's move on. It's like speed dating here.
I don't know about that.
So once you've got the talent in and you are hiring, you're probably attracting some of the millennials, but they're joining the workforce with these older, more mature generations.
Watch it.
Careful.
How do you accommodate their work styles, their needs, their wants within the same workplace?
Well, I think that you've got to take it in baby steps. I'll give you some specific instances. We have a particular VP that did not want to give up his office and sit out in the open area. And there's this fear of not having the space when you need it. So what we did is we did a reverse reservation for him. So he has first right of refusal every day on his we did not set up an office. We set up a huddle room. So he has a filing cabinet in there that he can lock. And by 10 o'clock every day, he logs in and he either checks into his space or he doesn't. If he doesn't, then the space is released for other people to use as a small huddle space. We want to ease them into this. Another instance is where we have another huddle room that's shared by 4 VPs. So they know that if they have to get a space, that space is going to be more available than maybe some of the other spaces on the floor.
Okay.
And I think what you're looking at now is doing that even better and having it be a quote-unquote passive or transparent check-in by connecting to another device that he may have touched coming into the office, like a security card or an IP address, so that whenever he or she comes into the office, that the check-in, quote unquote, or the verification of presence is done in a very transparent way.
Absolutely. It's almost like a silent check-in to their space and then any conferencing that they have scheduled for the day.
So you've got
one of the things I did want to point out just with this this photo that we have on the screen is that when you're looking at the flexible space in your program, take a look at people, take a look at how they function throughout their day. The ability to have a quiet area but not have it confined to where you have to go into a room and close the door, I think is a big choice for people. And this quiet area has been very successful just in terms of the fact that people can come here, go and do some heads down work with not having to be isolated from the rest of the community.
So you're providing different kinds of space.
Right.
It sounds like you're multiple kinds of space.
Mm-hmm. And the improvement to that is whenever you not only provide alternate places and different types of work inside the office, you augment that with different kinds of space outside the office. And so one of the things that we see is companies trying to and architects and interior designers trying to get companies to put in as many different types of space as they possibly can inside the office, forgetting that there's a nice coffee shop downstairs, there's a large conference room in the hotel nearby, there's other kinds of space that you don't have to build inside your space because your people are outside the space 60 to 70% of the time anyway. Why don't we take advantage of those network of places where people go to work and not have to think that we have to build it all inside our space?
And DeAnne, do you find that the generations are different for who likes to work inside the office or outside?
I would think that the millennial group is more willing to move in and out throughout the day, but I also do think I think it's opening up people's minds in terms of how they work. One thing that I would definitely recommend, and it's just a continual challenge for us as well, is in your change management program, take a look at educating your management teams of how do you now manage people that you don't always see? Or how do you manage in a different work environment where you may have people in different areas of the building and not necessarily face-to-face with you? So you're managing more on the outcome of what you're producing versus the continual performance of what you can physically see. And I think just transitioning our mid-level management into that mindset is very beneficial.
DeAnne, this is Jim again. I would also add, we all have an understandable tendency to generalize about things like generational differences, but I'm fond of quoting Alvin Toffler, who said, one size misfits all. People are individuals, and our jobs are different. Some people, and they vary from day to day as well. People may be doing a lot of project teamwork, but then need a couple of days to do to write up a report or something. And we all have individual work styles and different patterns. It may sound daunting to try to give everybody the individual attention that they need and that would benefit them, but I think we're moving in that direction, and I find it very encouraging. I mean, there is a tendency to say, well, the baby boomer generation, the older, more mature folks are used to coming into the office and used to having a private office or whatever. But I can tell you, as one of those folks, that commuting into a big city gets old, just like as you get older. And I've seen several instances where some of the older members of the workforce are delighted to be able to work from home several days a week. So, I mean, I think we really need to pay attention to individual requirements and individual preferences and work styles. And the good news is that we can, much more than we used to be able to.
And I think that's, going back to one of the concepts that DeAnne talked about is HR, IT, and real estate, or let's just say people and real estate and technology. That space as a perk item on the chart, so space can be a perk, but you know what? Certain generations think technology is a perk, not space. And certain other maybe generations think that more flexibility is the perk. So if you can add these other perks to your workplace, it then makes everybody, depending on, as Jim said, the choices are so important. I can choose flexibility because that's more important to me than a nice office, or I can choose flexibility or a new phone or a new piece of technology or a new capability, which is more important. And so blending those perks can really help with the adoption of the new workplace strategy.
Yeah. One of my clients a number of years ago had a very archaic technology platform. They had been going through some financial trouble, and they had avoided investing in new technology. And at one point, one of their engineers said, if you give me a good laptop, he said, I don't care if I sit on an orange crate. I need that laptop. I mean, that was his choice. It was the technology that mattered a whole lot more than the space in that instance.
Absolutely. Great. Well, let's move on. So you did talk some earlier about cutting costs and optimizing, but let's dive a little bit deeper. You've got the Blue Workplace program and work from home. What are some of the benefits that you've really found from those two programs, and alternatively, what are the challenges that you've faced?
So the work from home program, I think, has been very successful. We even have what we would call a virtual site in Waco, Texas, where we do not have a physical building, but we do. We used to have one, and everyone, 100% of the individuals there, went to work from home. And it has been a very successful experience for all of them. So I think the ability to give people that flexibility and choice is very empowering, and I think that is a nice retention, retention for talent, because that's the one thing. One thing is, attracting the talent, but then retaining that talent as well and keeping them on board. So that has been very successful for us. One of the other things that we did with Blue Workplace is, you can see in this photo that we have a tech bar, and most of our technical work that's done by IT with our employees is through a call-in center, where you can submit a ticket online, or you can actually call a hotline number and submit a ticket that way. But what we have found that on the Blue Workplace floors, when people have access to a person immediately, they can pick up their technology, take it over to them, and say, hey, look, I can't log in for the day. Can you help me out? That has been a huge success. Just having that interaction with another person. The time it takes to fix a tech issue is extremely reduced. And I think it is a perk for the individuals, because, they feel like they're being taken care of. And their workday is not revolved around the frustration of getting something fixed. It's, I get this fixed and I move on with my day.
And that's a classic kind of a understanding, right, DeAnne? It's a classic for balancing cost reduction with productivity. So you have this Blue Workspace program that's helping you cut costs. I think you said you've increased your capacity by 25%. So that helps you to add those 25% more people without having to add real estate. And so the money that you have saved or deferred because you didn't have to do that, one of the key principles here is to take that money and drive it right back into what makes people more productive so that you can generate more revenue. And that's a classic example, because somebody might say, hey, that person behind the bar costs a lot of money, we want to cut them out. And if IT and HR and real estate are truly integrated and they truly understand both the corporate strategy and the budgets are all working together, so the cost to the technology organization of adding a person is balanced against this cost savings that the real estate organization has. That's why it's so critical to look at all of this in concert.
Yeah, I think one of the things we're all coming to realize, it's taken some organizations a long time to come to this, but we are so dependent on technology today that anything you can do to speed up the turnaround of someone can't use their laptop, they're not productive. And it's effective, not just the lost laptop, it's the lost salary of the person who's not able to be productive. So this kind of rapid response, I think, is really critical. But DeAnne, I want to ask you a little bit different kind of question. You've referred a couple of times to the virtual workplace and people working from home full time. How do you keep them part of the culture and keep them connected to the organization when they're isolated like that? That's an issue I've seen in several of my clients, and I just wonder what you're doing to keep them feeling connected to the rest of the organization.
Well, I've asked that question to a couple of supervisors that I know that have their entire team working from home. And, I think that's where I have a very strong feeling that HR really needs to be engaged, because at that point that's us educating the supervisors and managers in terms of how do we manage and how do we keep the engagement of our employees when we don't see them. And I do think that, claims customer service there is a direct outcome of performance metrics that they can watch to identify whether or not the person is being productive and doing their job. So I think that's one key thing that the managers look at. But I also know that they have standard weekly touch-base meetings where everyone's on the call. I do know of one manager that even does a meeting every single morning. Everybody calls in and they talk about what they're going to do for the day. And then, they all have to be on IM. So part of that is dependent on what the manager wants to do. But I've seen them get a little bit, I've seen them get creative with the technology to make sure the person is there and checked in and engaged in the day.
Yeah. It's the messaging you just referred to. I think it's a really important part of this. One of the companies I worked with a few years ago, it's in the healthcare insurance industry, and they sent a lot of their claims processing and call center people home, and people actually reported feeling more connected to each other when they were working from home than when they were in the office. One of them said, I would walk down the hallway in the office, and all I could see was people with headsets on with their backs to the door, working, and I didn't want to interrupt them. He said, now that we're at home, I've got to either call them on the phone or use an IM, and I feel like I'm actually closer, more connected with them now than I was when I was in the office. So technology can help a lot with that.
Right, and then we do also have community events at our buildings to where, like for holiday parties, they'll come in, for part of the day, and we will have. That's where we start to pull in some of the hoteling stations, because at that point, they're going to come in for the day and they're going to work and then take a couple hours of a break to go to the holiday party. So that's where you want to provide a little flexibility in your space to allow people to be in the office for the day.
Right. Yeah. And so working from home, and we kind of say working from home all the time, but actually maybe not all the time. Maybe it's a balance, and so you're working from home a lot of the time, but because you have a very flexible workplace, those people can then book a space and come in, and they want to sit next to DeAnne because DeAnne's in the office, and they wanted to make sure if they're going to spend the hour and a half to come into the office that they know where to go to make sure that they run into you. So the systems that are put in place help that. And the more that you understand that, and the better you measure that, and the better you operationalize that movement, you can move from the current 25% advantage, so that's a 1.25 to 1 ratio, to the 2 to the 3 to the 4, and by increasing that flexibility, you're also increasing the cost reduction. And then you can put that cost reduction back into the people. And I think people really appreciate new workplace strategies if they see the benefit for them. If they just see it as a cost savings thing for the organization, they are much less likely to want to participate. But if they see that money that's being saved is directly put back into people at the tech bar, directly put back into nicer workplaces, directly put back into more flexibility and choices about where to go to work in a co-working location or other, oh my gosh, that drives that engagement so much better.
Yeah, and John, what you're also talking about is simply making it easy to make those choices and find the space and all of that. That's what the technology support really does. It just makes it almost invisible, but it's the flexibility and the choices are there. It's just the way you do it.
Thank you, Dr. Ware.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I'm gonna move us along to our
getting the hook again, Jim.
This one's kind of an exciting one because at this point, we've talked about really the challenges that people are thinking about every day, organizations, the traditional way of looking at these challenges. But there's a way to kind of look beyond just cost cutting, optimizing, providing flexibility, and that's, how can we monetize our workplace in new ways? And monetize doesn't necessarily mean a direct cash in hand. It can mean many different things. So I want to hear what you all have to say and about that. And DeAnne, maybe a good place to start is looking at kind of your traditional current state of, you're actually leasing to tenants and how you're managing that, but move into kind of the beyond what are some other options for monetizing space?
Yeah, just one quick comment that people may not know is that HCSC owns a large building in Chicago that they also lease out to other people as well as HCSC for their own internal operations. So they are the landlord and the tenant at the same time, so it gives them a special advantage. But these same advantages could be handled with your landlord, whether or not they're part of your organization or not. So go ahead, DeAnne.
Right. So we definitely, throughout our entire enterprise, our real estate portfolio is diverse in the sense that we own some of our properties, we lease some of the properties. Some of the leases are long-term and some of them are a shorter term. And I think one of the challenges we have, especially in Chicago, is that flexibility of, is there a buffer between us and the tenant? And what does that buffer look like? And like I had said earlier in the presentation is that, 5 to 10 years ago, that buffer looked like 2 vacant floors that were shelled out that we did not use. And since then, we have built them out, either for our expansion or for our tenant expansion. So that is one of the challenges I think that we pose is we're kind of hitting that virtual glass ceiling up against our tenants. And, what do we do for swing space while we're trying to optimize our existing footprint without enlarging it, with being able to convert more floors to Blue Workplace. We need that swing space, or we need that ability to shift people out for a few months so we can get these floors built out. So that's kind of a transition that we have a challenge with. And then, one thing too is with the Blue Workplace program, it's been such a success that we've got people waiting in line. When is it our turn? When do we get to go into this new environment? So, the rate in which we're converting floors is, pretty quickly. So, that's one thing that we constantly, are looking at. The other thing is in some of our other cities, we have marketing and sales sites, and we can have a marketing sales site that might have about 20 to 25 people in there, or we can even have one that might have one office and one conference room for one person in a single city. So that's where, and it's leased. So that's where, do we start to look at optimizing that side of the portfolio to say, do we share that space with other people, or do we give that space up and possibly look at sharing another company's space with them and we book on demand? So, that's something that we could possibly look at in the future, actually in the near future, just to see how we can really hone in on all of our leases versus just, focusing on headquarters. And
that's really underneath the covers why we built AgileQuest's new platform. the power of it is that the landlord and the tenant are on the same system, and all the tenants are. And so the tenants can share space between themselves if they wish to do so. The tenants can then share space that the landlord provides to them if they choose to do so. And having it all be on one platform makes sure that it's managed and you don't get all the, you don't have two people trying to get the same space at the same time. So, and the words that Jim said is removing the friction to making that happen seamlessly and cleanly, and then you can account for it all by who used what space, when, for how long, between your trusted partners, between the landlord and the tenant, and that it really is a very powerful thing. Just one other comment on kind of this idea of monetizing space. So the direct way of doing it would be to charge for the space by the hour, by the day, by the week, by the month. There's another indirect way to monetize, and frankly, probably even a more powerful way. We talked about one, which is sharing swing space. Think about banks with their retail branches. I don't know, I can't even remember the last time I was in a retail branch. They're not being used very much. They're often very long-term leases that are owned by the bank, or they're owned by the bank or very long-term leases. So now you have this incredible asset that's sitting, they're very nice. They're sitting in very high traffic areas because that was important when they were located. My gosh, wouldn't it be interesting if a bank could say to their, hey, if you sign up for this loan, or if you sign up for this checking account, or if you become a customer of our bank, guess what? Membership has its privileges with our bank, and you get places to work. Any one of our branch offices is available to go to work. Just click here, find available space, and go to work there. Really powerful ways to leverage and monetize that space by driving sales with your space. It could be with your partners, and you say, hey, if you're ever in downtown Chicago, love to have you come to our HCSC space. Come on in, just click here, and now management knows who's coming. The salespeople know who's coming. They can understand that. You can have the security badges ready for them when they come in, and now they get invited into your space so that they can go to work. Lots of different ways of using this word or defining this word called monetize.
That's a great example, John.
Oh, go ahead, Jim.
No, that's it. I just was going to compliment. I think I've heard of a bank that has actually done exactly what you're describing, and just think of the value of presence, of building relationships with your customers because they're around. Have a cup of coffee with them, whatever. It's a powerful model.
So one of the things that I've looked at too, just for example, in the high-rise in Chicago, if we turn 2 floors in between us and the tenants into this flexible space that you're talking about in terms of allowing people to come in and use it on a short-term basis and booking through the system, a couple of obstacles that we've thought about is how do we get around physical security and network security, because that would be 2 big concerns of ours. And I think we can overcome it, but I think when you start looking at this, you've got to start thinking about too is how are we still making sure that we're protecting our company, because especially in the healthcare industry, we've got the PHI and the SPI confidentiality that we've got to keep. So those 2 items would definitely be brought up if we introduce this idea.
And so we have, and as we talked, DeAnne, there's you already have some very public space. I mean, if you think of a bank branch, it's a very public space. You have people walking in there that you have no idea who they are. At least you know who's coming in when they make a reservation for that space because you know who they are. They know they're a customer, and so you can trust that certainly better than just people walking off the street. But you have some public space in that building that could be leveraged at first, and then as you start to have those trusted relationships, now you can say, you know what, I'm going to take these 10 desks and these 2 conference rooms and only allow those to be used by people from outside my organization. So the platform allows that to happen. And then from a technical security, again, HR, IT, and real estate needs to be working together. The technology people have already figured out how to do guest Wi-Fi, so that shouldn't be an issue as well because they're not going to be on your network; they'll be on the guest network. And I've just got a hook.
I really hate to end that, but we are just about out of time, and we want to make sure we get to a couple of questions that are coming in. So just kind of wrapping it up, we will have a poll here in a second, so get that started. But we just want to kind of reiterate a couple of things that we really want you to get out of this discussion today. And, starts with cutting costs and balancing these other priorities is not in direct opposition of improving your workplace performance, but in direct correlation. So by cutting out what you don't need, you're actually putting that money back into the performance of the company. And then you must balance your real estate portfolio between your core long-term leases and much shorter flexible leases. And depending on your company or industry, that could be 90-10 or 80-20. It's just depending on what you actually need. And then to have a successful program, you really need to measure your results and success for continuous improvement. So on that note, we just want to find out from you all, out of all of these priorities or challenges that we've discussed today, if you could pick one, what would be your organization's top priority? And we're going to go ahead and start the poll and give you a couple minutes or a minute to answer. But while you're all answering, I just wanted to say a quick thank you before we hop into Q&A for our panelists. This has been a really great discussion. So if you could enter in your questions into the poll, and we'll be taking the responses and using this when we develop the follow-up webinar that's kind of a deeper dive, so we make sure that we really are getting to some of the topics that are most important. It looks like right now, interestingly, how do we cut costs and optimize workplace assets is leading quite significantly with using the workplace to support changing business priorities and monetizing our space in close second. All right, so we can go ahead and close that poll, and we do have a couple questions just in the next few minutes. I know people have other meetings to get to, so
there's a holiday party waiting for people.
There is, exactly. Exactly.
And we are in the way of that holiday party.
All right. So without further ado, I'll send it over to Brandon, who has the questions teed up for us.
Thank you so much, Ashley. So yes, we're going to take some questions from the audience. If you haven't submitted a question, please feel free to do so in the Q&A panel to the right of your screen. The first one that came in, this is going to kind of go back a little ways in the webinar, but did you have teams that were very paper heavy? How did you handle getting them to a paperless model?
DeAnne,
Brandon, this is Jim. If I could respond real quickly to that. I have some experience with that because it's a really good question, because setting people up to work from home is not just a physical move for them. It really does affect your business processes. Again, the HMO that I worked with a number of years ago, not a Blue Cross Blue Shield, but a Medicare HMO, had that reality, and they realized as they were setting up some pilot projects for people working from home that they had to fundamentally redesign their business processes to move into a paperless environment before they could really have people working remotely. One of the things they did was they almost had a contest. I mean, it amounted to that. They got a whole kind of public thing going about how can we reduce the amount of paper we're using, and they had some big bins in the center of the office, and they were literally giving people prizes for how much paper they turned over to be destroyed. But and that was sort of a going public about moving to a much more technology, digitally based business processes, which was a lot of work in itself. But you're absolutely right that you've got to pay attention to that. That's the most important thing I can say.
I would agree, and I think we challenge people to use our off-site storage. We have a retention policy a lot of times with our different business units in terms of how many years we need to keep paper copies of documents. So we do challenge them to definitely move that off-site to our off-site storage versus keeping that housed in an office environment that's going to be, a higher cost per square foot that we're having to, maintain versus moving it to an off-site where we have a lower cost per square foot.
Yeah, and a lot of it is just sort of, there's a PR aspect to it and encouraging people to start using the digital technology. I think it's easier today than it was 10 years ago, too. I know one CFO who set up an off-site storage arrangement and had people turning files over and literally lots of stuff to be sent out to that off-site storage. About a year after they set it up, she literally destroyed most of those files without telling anybody, and nobody ever complained. I mean, it was not a healthcare business. It was a different industry. So they didn't have, retention requirements. But it was rather telling, I think, that nobody, they had it set up so you could get your file back on short notice if you needed it. And they'd gone like a whole year without anybody asking for anything. So she just destroyed all the files.
It's a fun thing to do whenever you're kind of moving to a new workplace strategy and saying you're going to start to share desks. And one of the kind of cool things and fun things you can do is to have certain kinds of contests. And one of the contests that I've become familiar with is where you try to find the person with the oldest piece of paper or the oldest product brochure or the oldest contract. And there's people with a brochure from 20 years ago that product hasn't, that people stuff brochures in there because they want to make sure they have them. And then all of a sudden their files are full of this stuff. They haven't been selling that product for 5 years and they still have it, or 10 years or 15 years or 20 years. So that's a lot of fun. So there's some really cool things that you can do that way.
Sounds like additional cost cutting and optimization of the files. All right.
Right.
Sure, I had one more.
And the technology too. We introduced SharePoint, so we have team rooms, electronic team rooms that we upload files to, versus even, going to a network server. So we're even transitioning to the cloud with that.
Yeah, and there's another really important component to this conversation around paper, which is paper isn't just about mobility and flexibility from a standpoint of workplace, and we're doing this because we're moving to a new workplace strategy. It's because of business continuity and business resiliency. If you rely on paper, and you have to have paper to get your job done, what happens when you can't get to the office? What happens when there's a fire? What happens when you have a problem? What happens when the hurricane hits? You have to be able to get to your information, and the only way to do that is to make sure that it's stored in a cloud or on a server or somewhere else that you can get to it. So business continuity and business resiliency is a really good reason to make sure that you do this thing called, you manage paper out of the business. Anyway.
So
I think we just ran out of time.
We are. I know we are at the end of our time. We want to make sure we are cognizant of everyone's schedule. So we do have a couple other questions that came in. We will maybe try to answer those on the side and get in touch. If you do have additional questions, you can always contact us. So, Brandon?
Yeah, sure. As you said, that's about all the time we have today. And we definitely want to thank everyone for joining us. DeAnne, Jim, John, Ashley, thank you all so much. It was really a great presentation. As we mentioned before, if we didn't get to your question, please provide your email address in the chat window, and we will reach out to you with an answer as soon as possible. Again, thank you all to our speakers for joining us today. To everyone in attendance, thank you again. Please be sure to watch your inbox for a recording of this webinar and information about future AgileQuest webinars. Visit us at agilequest.com, where you can submit your email address and select what information is important to you. You will also find information about our latest product, AgileQuest SaaS, which was designed and built to optimize your workplace to tackle many of the strategies discussed today, including using your excess capacity to share space and generate revenue. We offer free personalized demos of the product as well, and a bi-monthly demo webinar presentation, which will be coming up in the new year. So once again, thank you so much for joining us today. From all of us here at AgileQuest, have a great day and happy holidays.